The virtues of handwriting with a fountain pen, in my experience. Let me begin by telling you a magical story. I decide to write to my beloved. I gather my thoughts. Thoughts, ephemeral and ineffable as they are, somehow lead to an intricate movement of the hand. How on earth that happens, I don't know. I finish my letter, place it in an envelope, and I post it. It goes overseas. My beloved arrives home from work, opens the envelope, unfolds the paper, scans it with her eyes, and it becomes a thought in her head, hopefully similar to the thought that was in my head. I think that's phenomenal. How does that happen? Anyway, using a fountain pen for handwriting compared to typing, I've noticed a few things. Pretty obvious. It's slower, more considered, and I feel there's a deeper thinking. Partly perhaps to do with not making mistakes in meaning, spelling, grammar, or hand movement, because then you realise you've got to redo it. I do cross out, just a simple strike through, if I've written a lot and made a mistake. But you know, increasingly, you make less mistakes, somehow. One thing I noticed was that the feel of my brain, if you will, or my mind, was different. It felt to me that something, it's a different pathway or something that perhaps isn't used for anything else. I did wonder about Alzheimer's and so on, whether it's a good thing to keep handwriting, and I looked and there seems to be some research that suggests it can be useful. So I don't know, but it just feels different to me. Another thing is that it feels like an occasion. If you're a doctor writing notes, they notoriously, back in the day, had bad handwriting because it had to be quick, writing prescriptions and so on. I couldn't read it. Perhaps people then were more used to reading handwriting and their variances. I don't use it for that. We used to do it for school essays. It's more of a chore. But now I use it. Not always as an occasion, but there's a bit of an occasion about it. I use it, for instance, to write notes for these videos. I've got various books full of writing. I take myself to a cafe with my pen, sit down, so it is an occasion, I guess. A couple of letters that sent to a beloved. Incidentally, I don't always post them. Sometimes I write them and then photograph them with my phone and then email or text them if you want to get there fairly quickly. Posting is nice though. Some things about the fountain pen that I find then, it's an instrument. First off, a good one. It can be customized, get different widths of nib and flex. The flex is when you press harder, the nib spreads a bit so the line becomes thicker. The angle that you hold varies, so the writing has some character in it, your unique character from the way your hand happens to move. The pens can be functional, beautiful, hopefully both. Why not? There are wonderful inks and papers available. I'm surprised at the amount in 2018, soon to be 19. And you can also build a lifetime relationship with the pen. You don't use it and throw it away, use it and throw it away. The one pen. And the nib wears to your style after a while. So how I use them, I've mentioned for letters, obviously, or I write the letter and photograph it. For video preparation here. I used to use them for school reports, and I preferred that because I'd sit down, all the school reports would be printed out. Again, I might take myself to a cafe or wherever if I felt like it, take my pen. And because of that change in thinking, I think the reports were better, more personal, more... Obviously, for things where they need to keep a record, I think I then used to take them to the printer at the school, got a big photocopier, and you could print to PDF because they needed electronic versions these days, as you can imagine. So that lasted for a while, but then that became not so efficient for them, so now I type them on a computer, and I think that's a shame, but hey. How I don't use them, well, no longer for school reports, sadly, and I don't use them when I'm out and about, though you could. I've rarely had leakage or anything, but if you're out and about, it might, I don't know, I use a biro. In the next section, we'll take a look at a couple of my pens, a couple of different types of paper, some inks, no thorough thing, and a little bit about maintenance and use in my humble experience. So I'll see you there. A couple of pens, if I may. My father had a Parker pen way back, and he gave it to me. I don't know what happened to it. It was sent back for repair. I don't think they did a particularly good job, and it kind of got lost in the mists of time. So funny, isn't it? So when I came to get a pen, I went for a Parker. There are loads of others, but that's the way things go sometimes. And this is a Parker Centennial. And another later. First one I got from an auction site came with this very nice, very simple device, but very nice leather. And I found out what it was, can't remember now. Then managed to find an eBay seller with a few others for a very good price. This one hasn't softened up yet. The barrel unscrews. And it has what's called a cartridge converter. So you can use cartridges, or you can use this converter and you can refill it. And it saves throwing away loads and loads of plastic. When writing, these are fairly large pens. I've got reasonably large hands, so it fits my hand very nicely. But I prefer it when it's what they call posted. Some pens don't post, just won't fit. Others post, but as you write, they become loose. These post quite securely, and I find that counterbalance, the weight there, makes my writing better. I have to write more slowly, as you can understand, because it's harder to move it so quickly. But I prefer it. My writing looks, to me, noticeably better. You can get various inks. I favour, for the moment, Diamine. This one's Damson. What kind of colour you can see. This one is one of my favourites. It's Sargasso Sea, which is a kind of a blue. You won't be able to see, I don't think. No. Maybe a hint you can see around the edge. And this one is ancient copper, which again you might be able to get a hint of it every now and then. Along with the inks, of course, you need paper, and there are various papers. I don't have any really fancy ones. This one describes itself as 100% cotton fibre. Well, this one is a rather unusual one. A little bit novelty, perhaps. Got sort of rose flakes in it. A little bit dry for writing with a fountain pen, so you have to take your time. This one is a rose-coloured parchment. This one I think they call laid. It's kind of a cream colour. It's got a bit of a texture. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'll show you a writing sample at the end, but there's just one more thing. I thought it through and came to believe that fountain pens must be a more environmentally friendly option. And that's what I believed. But I looked online, there were a couple of arguments. One was that fountain pens, with the materials, the metal and the plating, are not so environmentally friendly, even though you might keep one for your lifetime. But beyond that, they pointed out that many fountain pen users have more than one pen. I have only a few, but I know some have many, and they can't use them all the time. What I found interesting was that something I believed 1 minute, the next minute I was not so sure, and even heading in the opposite direction. So, what is my belief worth at any one time? As a result of that, these days, I'm not so adamant.